All right, Stephen, we mentioned it at the top of the show, but I want to make sure that everybody knows, this week is Amazon Web Services reInvent. If you're in Vegas, you know this because it's taken over everything. It probably has more space taken up than the F1 race. And just like every other show that we cover here, there's been a lot of big announcements that have been coming out of it. A lot of people on stage holding up chips and semi trucks and snowmobiles and you name it. We wanted to have a closer look at a couple of these because they're near and dear to our hearts, and they also don't involve chatbots. So the first one is that Amazon has announced that they will be using NVIDIA's NVSwitch technology to create new rack scale AI platforms. So this allows someone to take something like NVIDIA's Grace Hopper and build something using that, which is kind of like the de facto AI standard right now. Or they can use Amazon's AWS Nitro DPUs along with Elastic Fabric adapters to build those. Do you know what Nitro and Fabric adapters don't use? InfiniBand. They use Ethernet instead, which I thought was kind of an interesting move. But here's the thing. We know that AWS has designs on getting into the AI game because they don't want the other companies who are sending all of these rack units out to be making all the money. So how does this play together, especially when you look at some of the other announcements, Stephen?
Well, it is interesting to think, isn't it, that AWS now has one of the biggest, if not the biggest, NVIDIA supercomputers out there. This is really next generation stuff. I think that it's important to recognize that this is based on the latest and greatest technology that NVIDIA has to offer. They are absolutely leaning into most of NVIDIA's technology, including the Grace and the Hopper, including NVLink, which allows all of these devices to talk to each other in basically a massive multi-processor configuration. The estimates on the size of this thing are just unbelievable. It's not clear to what extent it's up and running, but I would say that this is going to be really an exascale supercomputer running in AWS, focused around basically NVIDIA-bound workloads. So on the face of it, basically we've got a beautiful announcement for somebody like Jensen Huang to come out on stage, which he did here at reInvent, and announce alongside the Amazon AWS team, and everybody looks great. But as you point out, there's a few nuances here. One of the nuances, of course, is the fact that it uses Ethernet instead of InfiniBand. That's interesting because basically everything else they're doing leans so far into NVIDIA's technologies. I have to give a special shout out to a great article over the Next platform, which really goes through this. We'll include the link in the show notes. But it points out that, for example, it appears that high bandwidth memory is really the whole ball game here. Basically, having a system with just massive amounts of memory is what allows this thing to perform as well as it does. And frankly, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays alongside Amazon's other offerings. As you mentioned, AWS also announced their own Graviton 4 and Trainium 2 processors. Those could be seen as competitors for Grace and Hopper, of course, along with Intel and AMD. So, basically the news here is that AWS is going to have an AI supercomputer, just like their arch rival Microsoft does in Azure, being the host of the popular OpenAI ChatGPT.
And I think one thing that needs to be kind of pointed out here, kind of you mentioned it, NVIDIA has been using InfiniBand for a very long time because they own it. It came over in the Mellanox acquisition, and they're talking about the fact that it's very purpose-built for these workloads. But they've even admitted with their Spectrum X technology that Ethernet is the way that they want to go. And when you talk to the people in the Ultra Ethernet Consortium, Ethernet is the way they want to go too. I think that this is kind of maybe tacit admission from Amazon that they know they'll never beat NVIDIA at the InfiniBand game. So think about it like this. If you want ultra high performance, you're going to be buying it directly from NVIDIA. They're going to drop ship you however many racks that it takes, and they're going to cable those up with InfiniBand. And you're going to write them a really big check, and you're going to cry, and you're going to have your AI system. But if you don't want to do that, if you want to build your own system in the public cloud, Amazon will build it for you. The catch is that you probably won't be able to use InfiniBand because it does not leverage existing technologies that Amazon has. This does. If you already have a Nitro DPU in every server and you're already using elastic fabric adapters, I don't need to do any more extra plumbing to make this thing work, which is a huge win for Amazon because they don't have to invest in any new hardware and they don't have to, send somebody down to do some cabling jobs. We just flick a couple switches and suddenly that's running the kind of Ethernet network, ultra Ethernet, it's basically what it is, to connect all those systems together. And it can be elastic on demand however you want. You don't have to write the giant check to NVIDIA. You just have to write a slightly smaller check at least 12 times a year to Amazon to get that money back. And I think that is the way that we're going to see this going forward. Microsoft may be an exception to this because of their heavy investment in OpenAI. They're going to use whatever OpenAI needs.